at law and legal conferences within and outside Nigeria. He has published extensively in Nigeria and internationally peer reviews. He is a member of Octagon 90, Ife Recreational Club, Ikoyi Club, 1938, and Unilag Staff Club. He is happily married to Olushola with 4 adorable children. Can we please give a round of applause as we welcome Professor Abiola Sani.
Thank you very much, the MC. Before I observe protocol, let me make a minor correction in my profile. I was actually called to bar 32 years ago. But I'm no longer the chairman of the National Tax Policy Implementation Committee. About 3-4 years ago, I was succeeded by the former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the person of Mr. Abatunde Fowler, and the current chairman I do not take it for granted. And also permit me to mention a few of my friends, Biodu Fatuli, Jide Ololade, and the lady who has been following me up, Moniba Odunami, for your professionalism. The follow-up have been unique. You make me feel special. You make me feel that, oh, you really wanted a message from this messenger. So I appreciate you. And I also must mention my neighbor and my senior friend in the person of Mr. Michael Olayemi Shonubi, my neighbor of about 22 years. I was under him in the same building, and thank God we have never had issue. The last time we met, I think it was in Asoro. Yeah, the professional, the Nigerian Institute of Quantity Survey was either walking in as we were coming out, and then we waved to each other, and I'm happy we are doing extremely great. So now, I have tweaked the topic of my presentation a bit. You know, when you have you attempted an open book exam before? If you school in Nigeria, you are not likely to have done it. But it is not something easy. But lecturers will think that if you give an open book exam, everybody will pass. I wanted to talk initially about something totally different. Oh, how we can use taxation to support government, to rebuild the city, But I said, I'm not sure if the governor will be seated. So I have toned it down to what I think will benefit Lagos, benefit the project you are passionate about, and also benefit you. So I'm going to be speaking to Tax Advocacy 101 for architecture professionals. So my coordinates are on the screen, and this is the outline of my presentation. I have about 6 outlines, and if time permits, I will express my thoughts on the keynote speech. But permit me to appreciate Mr. Badeklo Okusoya for his excellent delivery. He made a firm, solid foundation for what we follow. With his presentation, my tax is easier. Because if we want to transform Lagos into what we want it to be, somebody must be picking the bills. Beyond vision, we have to power it with resources. Because money answers how many things? All. Okay? So I will look at the introduction, the few objectives, clarify the concept of taxation so that you can be clear that certain things you regard as taxation may not actually be taxation. So it's not a question of the quantum. What are the features? Then the triggers of taxation. In what circumstances will you be liable to pay tax? Not many, but majority do not know. Okay? Then we look at the overview of the Nigerian tax system, and then I will zero in on 2-3 taxes that I think are major to architectural practice. They are major to professionals. Then I also give you what I may charge you for eventually, if the message is well received, and that is how to plan your tax affairs, how to pay less legitimately, in a way that no, the long arm of the law can never touch you. Okay? And I'll conclude with 1 or 2 recommendations. I begin by saying that architects, like other professionals, lawyers, engineers, they face a number of tax issues, either as taxpayer or as tax agent of collection. As a matter of fact, I decided to speak on this because presently I'm assisting an architect, and this is the scenario. He works for government, almost exclusively, and also the oil sector. So the taxes are withheld at source, and also government agencies and the oil companies, the IOCs, withhold VAT. So he thought that he had no tax obligation whatsoever. And he had run this business for about 15 years until he was faced with a demand, with a letter for audit. They've come for audit, they've slapped him with over 160 million. So the issue is, what is going to happen? This has affected his business because he has not been able to obtain TCC for the past 2 years. Because of COVID, initially that wasn't a problem, but right now, he wasn't able to obtain his TCC. And we went into it. Long story short, we were able to establish that he even has a refund from government, because we traced all the taxes withheld over the years from his income, and then put it side by side with his estimated tax liability, which we had not even gone into. And we discovered that for each year, he was in surplus. That is as far as company's income tax is concerned. But now, relating to VAT, we said he has no obligation, because when you deal with government, there is a clear provision that government should not pay you VAT. Rather, government should withhold VAT and remit to the FRS. Then similarly, in the oil sector, the IOC and the companies in the oil sectors are also agents of collection. So in the tax balance, we call this reverse charge. Okay? Rather than architects charging government, charging their clients in the oil sector, they will invoice them, but they will not pay the architects or the professional, they will remit. So we were able to knock off these big ticket items such that the company had to pay only tertiary education tax, and at the end of the day, the exposure wasn't up to 2 million, which he was happy to pay. And I said, look, I like what NIA Lagos chapter is doing. For 13 years, I'm not sure if anybody has spoken to you about taxation. And I said, why not take this message to them and say, look, there is nothing mysterious about this tax system. Actually, you could be shooting yourself in the foot by not doing it right. And I said, how can we have a conversation? And how can we support one another? Okay, so I must commend NIA Lagos chapter for this initiative, because people don't want to talk about taxation. Okay? But I bring good tidings. I bring good news. So this is not about how you are going to pay more taxes, but how you are going to be enlightened, become more enlightened, and pay what you should pay, which may actually be less. So if you look at chapter 3 of the National Tax Policy, it identified professional bodies as a key stakeholder. So I want NIA, including the national level, to see itself as a key stakeholder. So where is the shoe pinching you? Okay, it's good to talk around all these issues, but it will only work when we articulate them in a form that will make impact. If you talk to any politicians, because I do legislative support and intelligence, I've done it for years. All they want is, what do you want us to do? Is it a regulatory framework? Let me have it. Is it a regulation that you want, something that the commissioner or the governor will sign into law? So you must progress beyond talking to taking practical action and put it in the hands of the permanent secretary. And say, we do not just want to have a city architect in Lagos. We do not just want to have urban development policy. These are the documents. If you can walk the talk, the government will begin to take you seriously. Okay, so the objectives are to underscore your tax obligations as professionals, then simplify how the system works so that we can have a better understanding, then provide hints on tax planning, and also challenge you not just to talk, but to also get involved. We have had an architect as number 2. Why not an architect as number 1? The legal profession has also had a lawyer as number 2. Why not a lawyer as number 1? That may not be good news to so many people in Lagos, especially on this side. But why not a lawyer as number 1? Okay? So now let me quickly move to conceptual clarification. Generally, tax is a compulsory imposition by government to mobilize revenue from your purses into public purse for public purpose. And they know that without making it compulsory, you are not going to do it willingly. It's so serious that celebrities, political bigwigs go to jail on account of non-fulfillment of their tax obligation. Okay? So, and I've underlined all the imperative, the building blocks of taxation, so that you do not confuse something else with taxation. So, it's different from charges and fees, and I've listed them. What you pay to NIA can never be a tax. Okay? Payment to regulatory bodies are not taxes. What you pay for waste disposal, for advertisement, for water rates, because people pay all these to government agencies, those all manners of payment, they are not taxes. Okay? Contribution to pension. I understand there is a new one now in Lagos on health insurance, forcing you, whether you like it or not, to abandon your corporate health insurance policy and join what the state has just put aside. That is going to be very, very controversial and rock the boat. Okay? Because people are too enlightened for them to be taken for granted on a number of things. So, there is no quid pro quo, there is no direct benefit between what you pay as a taxpayer and what you enjoy. If you have gone to public schools, you cannot trace that, oh, it's the parents of your father that funded your education. Government aggregated funds from different sources and then determine the allocation. And that is what you will do if you are in power. If an architect becomes the president, if a lawyer becomes the president, that means that person in that office will now lead other bureaucracies, other institutions to determine who gets what, when and how. That is the prerogative of those who contest for power and who are fortunate to. Now, people then say, what do we benefit from government? I hope we do not have somebody in this audience who will make such statement, because it's not an enlightened statement. Okay? You may not benefit as much as you think you should compared to other countries. But to ask, now I'm a lecturer, I'm a professor, I'm a senior advocate. There are legal framework around all this. My children went to public schools. ISL, our children, Mr. Shomubi, are they not doing well now? They went to public school. How much did we pay? I will always put my hands in my pocket like this and pay their school fees. When people come to me for loan on how to finance education of their children, some in some of these elitist schools, and I'm forever grateful for that. Is it my dad who started the rank of senior advocate of Nigeria? It's the creation of law. So what I'm trying to say, using myself as an example, is that if you can dig deep, you will know that you won't government a lot. Even if you have your private jet, do you have your private airport? So long as we have government, we will have taxes. Just as you have contributions in your estates, providing those services. We are not mobilizing enough, that's why we are not getting the results. We are not mobilizing enough. A lot of people who should be in the tax net are not paying, and that's why they are not paying attention to government. Because we are free riders. Even those who are paid, like my client, who are even overpaid, did not know that it was paid. And that is exactly what I want to expose. And then some of you who are running away, you are saying, no, these people, you are actually losing money. You are indeed losing money. So now there are 9 situations where taxes are triggered. When you make a Do architects make money? Yes. Government is a silent partner in your practice. The way you will not want to cheat your partner without consequences. Also the way government will not allow you to cheat them. In some other clients, they have put together a system where before you even get your own, their money will come to them. And that is the way they finance nations across the world. America has far more oil than Nigeria. It is not referred to as an oil-producing country because the tax revenue is so humongous. And that is what makes America one of the greatest, I won't say the greatest anymore, world power. Okay? So now, disposal of assets. If you don't make money, you have one item, you dispose it, capital gain tax will be triggered. Then consumption of goods, all the things we are going to consume here today, they are liable to consumption tax, either sales tax or hotel occupancy, restaurant consumption tax of labor. Unfortunately, 2 taxes. Then documentation. You can make oral argument without any fees, but by law, if you want to make certain transactions, it must be in writing. So once you reduce transaction into writing, it will trigger stamp duties. Okay? When you import, and when you export, then production of goods. If there are some items on display that are being produced in Nigeria, there will be excise duties on them. Okay? Then when you occupy or you own a premises, tenement rate, or if you are a resident of the state, or you do business with the state. I understand in Lagos there is a 1% when you do business with them. There is no legal basis for that charge. But you know, it's a take it or leave it a situation. My president is that also. Because you know how you also to get the job, and at the end of the day they say, even federal institutions are doing it. And I say this is illegal. By the time you pile all these additional charges on top of all this, the cost of doing business gets out of control. Okay? So the Nigerian tax system has several structural challenges. All your questions are likely to focus on them. Just as we are saying that if we do not fix Nigeria from the foundation, there are so many things that will never work. All our professionalism will be in vain at the end of the day. If you go to another federal system, you are going to be licensed to practice from state to state. Is it better? We have to do a comparative studies. But each state will ring-fence its jurisdiction. Because whether you like it or not, in judiciary, that is what we have. You have Lagos High Court, you have Ogun State High Court. They would say because of the proximity, take a case meant for Lagos to Ogun, because we are neighbors, no. And they have their rules of court. Federal system has developed all this. But in Nigeria, we have a monolithic and a uniform system, which is unknown in any federal system. So we are talking about restructuring so that we can have efficient systems in terms of one, allocation of functions, so that the function that the chairman of Lagos chapter can perform, why should you ask the national to do it? You are busy expanding the frontiers for NIA nationally and internationally. What concerns, So you have distributed functions. I saw the way you are monitoring them. You are saying somebody else should go and fix the problem for you. But in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. So there are taxes, there are functions that local government should perform that are being performed by the states. And economists will tell you that there will be dysfunctionality. So allocation of resources. When you give tiers of government certain functions, you must also give them sufficient resources. So if federal government grabs all the taxing powers, what will the states? So we have a feeding bottle federalism. It's like you have a 60-year-old child who still comes home for pocket money. See the way I was bragging about our children, how old are they? They don't come to us for money anymore. They are independent. So when will our states and our local be independent? Because this is the hallmark of federalism. Once the financial freedom or liberty is compromised, that is the end of federalism. So now, what are the basic principles of taxation? I'll quickly go through it. Certainty, one tax, one statute, then strict interpretation of taxing statutes, then obligation to keep record. How many architects are keeping record? Record keeping is not easy, even for multinationals. So you must take a deliberate policy to do it. If you can't keep record, you can't be a lawyer. You cannot be a lawyer. If you are a lawyer and you cannot keep record, you will run into trouble. Because the tax authority will come one day, then tax planning is lawful. And that is why I can boldly say that I'm going to share with you tips on how you can save some money in a lawful way. I have an outfit that I call tax support services. Tax support services consult. And what we do is, this is your problem. This is the way to go about it. Okay, then overview of the Nigerian tax system. We have had, I will talk briefly about federal taxes, state taxes. I will not mention local taxes at all. Okay? And that should be the most significant, or it will be theoretical. If the tax system and the local government system were to be working, you will see that you will be more interested in the politics of where you live. Because you can't carry your house out of the jurisdiction. You cannot vote, you can vote with your feet, but you can't carry your property with you. The way people in all these gated communities take time to follow the development, who is going to be chairman, who is going to be treasurer. The moment they see inefficiency, they call a meeting, emergency meeting, and say, let's address it. That is what should happen at the local level. So I'm going to talk about personal income tax, company's income tax, withholding tax, and then VAT, briefly. Now, personal income tax is one tax. But we have 4 modes of administering it. Just 4 means of administering, because you are not going to treat Dangote the way you would treat somebody selling akara at the corner shop. They are two different. You are not going to treat an investor the way you would treat an employee. You won't treat the president of the NIA who makes money all over the world, and is known to the whole world, the way you are going to treat somebody who is an employee. Can you treat equally? No. That would be unfair. So now, there is similarity between company's income tax and personal income tax. So I'm not going to go to town on company's income tax. But the first one, direct assessment, relates to the big boys who are self-employed. But we can't assume that all of them are big boys, because there are those who are self-employed, who are just trying their entrepreneurial, so they are also in the informal sector. The second one, those who are in employment. The third one, those who are investors. You only get to invest when you have job benefit. All the people in the front row are investors. And that is what held them the front row and the back row too. So you must have a leftover before you can invest. And I'm going to start with that. Okay? Now, what do we mean by withholding tax? Withholding tax is a form of income tax, as you can see. It's not a separate tax. So it's a means of administering passive income. Income you make without exerting yourself. Income that is made without labor. You have shares in the company, you have money in a fixed deposit, you are an inventor, you are earning money from your creative work, or you are earning rent. Okay, and the whole idea is, before the time for payment of taxes due, whoever is making that payment has an obligation to withhold a percentage. In the case of company, 10%, in the case of individual, 5%. And then remit to government. Okay? Is that all? No. That is not the full story. So my clients, the company who came to me, thought that was the end of the story. But it's not the end of the story. At the end of the year, you will see under direct assessment that a taxpayer is expected to compute his income from all sources, including the withholding tax paid, and then net off what is due for what have been paid. But a lot of people do not follow through. So if you are doing consultancy for government, for establishment, you are entitled to what is called credit note. Credit note is like money. Because you don't know the value, we do. And we can help you pursue your credit note for value. So when they come and deliver this humongous liability, you can say, oh, wait a minute, you guys are also owing me this amount of money. With technology, it's now easier. You know, if government were to be very, very honest and operate with integrity, they should have taken account of all these credit notes without scamming, because some people can have a attack. Imagine you are in a reformed position and you are being served liability for over 160 million. You know, where are you going to start? Okay? Now, these are the rates of, please go to the other stage, like the other slide. The other slide, please. Okay. These are the rates. So what concerns us most are contracts. Once you are doing consultancy, either management services or consulting, it's liable. And the rate for individual is 5%, and the rate for company. So, what corporate vehicle do you think is most tax efficient? Even from what you are seeing in the board. It's company. So you rather pay 10% instead of 5%. Okay? What we are advising our client to do is to consider having a business name. Lawyers don't use limited. If architects are using limited, you are losing money. My chairman, I know you can afford to lose money. It doesn't show in your body. God has already blessed you. You are big, you are big. So what is 5% that you cannot give government? Or we can help you also save that for charity. If this makes sense, and this is the only thing, you will see that more architects will now know that there are reasons why you may need a limited liability company. Some establishment may say, oh, if you are not a limited liability company, you can't bid for certain jobs out of ignorance. But if that is the policy, you cannot change it, no problem. A lot of them now are now using business names to award contracts because then withholding tax obligation comes to them. These are some of the things we have been able to influence by virtue of a conversation like this and by force of our intellect. So when I see some of these changes, inwardly I'm happy. At least we are able to influence certain things in our limited space. Okay? So now, I quickly go to direct assessment. Direct assessment now is where a lot of people are not getting it, majority. Where the coin that I spoke about, after suffering withholding tax, thought that was the end of story. You see, by 31st of March every year, an individual taxpayer is expected to file returns. If you cannot file your returns there, you are going to see the consequences later. And I'm not going to ask you to indicate whether you have filed return because I know you will never be honest and open about it. But honestly, if you are hearing about 31st of March for the first time, it means if government wants to embarrass you, they will just pick you up. They will pick you up and there will be no defense if they are serious about prosecuting. So what a taxpayer is expected to do by that date is to take account of all his activities in the previous year and the preceding year. So in 2022, you take account of your activities in 2021, January to December. And then aggregate all the money that came in, all your expenses, and all the series of income from outside and inside. All the big boys making money from outside Nigeria, our tax law expects them to declare. You know, it might sound theoretical, but when they want to pick somebody up, okay? So you take all those, please go to that, okay, this is it. Then after that, you now have almost limitless opportunities to deduct from that. If you have read Big Dad, Poor Dad, you will know that being in employment is disadvantageous vis-a-vis being an entrepreneur. So you take your expenses, because that is capital. Then there are not all expenses. Government will also keep the gates very tight to ensure that you do not take more than you deserve. So there's what we call the test of being holy, exclusively, necessarily, and reasonably impure. You must justify why you spend what before they will allow you to take out. Then there are tax reliefs. I won't go into the details of that. There's also what you call capital allowance. You have incurred a capital item. If as a senior advocate of Nigeria, I bought and incurred capital item for my wig and gown and my robe. Of course, wig doesn't come cheap. And take it. Okay? So, losses. Because you won't start making money immediately. Losses, if any, then consolidated relief allowance. Look at all this. If you want to save money, that is where they advise you, why not pick up insurance? If you do not have insurance, you are not planning on how to pay less. If you are not increasing your pension contribution for those who are in employment, you are also not. Then you now apply the rates to the net, which is called the chargeable income tax. Then sometimes, okay, if you have withholding tax, which I told you about, applying to net it off. In his own case, his withholding tax was higher than the estimated tax liability, so he's entitled to a refund. So what they said is, go and pay tertiary education tax, and also some inconsequential, which didn't really matter to him. Okay? Then, minimum tax. If at the end of taking all these things out, there is nothing left, government will insist that you pay 1% of the aggregate, which may sound fair enough, but people like us criticize because you are taxing capital, and this is not something that is a legal practice. Okay, we have argued against it. We say no. If somebody can show by record, remember I said keep records, can show that no, have not made money in the last 5 to 4 years, why should you ask me to pay tax? Okay? Now, you now go to tax authority power to, when they come and they do not have access to any document, they just look at you, look at the way the chairman is dressed. Look at the way he's dressed. He looks like a movie star. You look at Elon Musk. Now, they will just say, this must be a big man.
He is worth this.
They will just, how much should we slam him? When they see the chairman of succession, architect Taiboko, they don't, this man, this showman must be, because you can't show like this if you are not emancipated up to a level. You can't even come to the public, because people will bring responsibility. But people like you are big enough to say, I have to live my life. So they will look at you, sir, and say, this is a big man. They have what they call high net worth. They look at your car, look at where you live in Banana Island, you live in, they just say, his liability is this amount of money. So some people are happy to pay that, but it may be a double-edged sword. So if you are not happy, what do? Keep your records. So this is how the rates are. A lot of people in Nigeria do not know the rate of personal income tax. I interviewed somebody who is a professional. What is the rate of income tax? He said 5%. Somebody said 10%. No, it's a progressive rate. The more you earn, the more exactly. So, in this way, a person whose taxable income is above 3.2 million, after they have deducted all the, we pay an average of 24% on excess. There are countries where people pay as much as 50%. I have friends abroad who are happy to pay it, and who are also happy to even pay more. Imagine if you are born without parents, and your state is able to send you to the best school, Ivy League, orphan, becoming somebody. Not that they become leader and they say, oh, I have no shoe. I had no shoe when I was growing up. They did not lack anything except there must even have been people in the orphanages who provided by their own support. And then some said, I even like to give more. Okay? So that is what we have relation to. Now, here as you hand, I'm not going to waste time on that, because I know the people here are not employed, they are employers. And I know you have people, am I correct now? Okay.
Employers and employees.
You see, employers are now trying to say they are employees.
No.
That is an invasion.
No, we have, some of us are employers, but some of the people in the audience are employees.
Okay, sir. Okay, let me patiently.
AMSEC is employee now.
He's a political office holder. Please go to the next slide. Please go to the next slide, please. Okay. Now, it applies to employment income. Remember, there are 4 modes. Why will you subject the income of an employee to to tax, the way you tax those who are in employment, and wait until March 31st the following year. So this is a system where as salary is being paid every month, the law obligates the employer as an agent of collection. So apart from your own liability, you also have responsibility as agent of collection, which you must be aware of. Okay? Employees obligated to register. How many professionals, don't let me focus on architects now. How many professionals are registered with the tax authority? Very few. And you know what? Unless you are registered, there are certain jobs you will never get. Because they will see you as a high risk. They will see you, thank you very much, sir. You see, they will see you as a high risk. You want to render services and you are not charging. They will see you as a high risk, and then this person doesn't even know what we are talking about. If they are not asking those who are applying for certain privileges to show evidence, maybe to even apply for political posts, even to become a son, you must show a taxpayer certificate. And there are folks who could not apply because they do not have. But that is not the right way to go. So they must register, they must fill this form. Okay? Fill this form by January 31st every year. And say, this is how much employees I have, this is how much we pay, and this is the cumulative. Okay? They must collect or design tax deduction card. They must satisfy the correctness. They must return the form to the tax office. This is what somebody can do administratively on your behalf. So employers are answerable for non-deduction, under-deduction, and non-remittance. Next slide, please. Okay? Now, presumptive tax. The people in the informal sector. People who had wanted to pay somebody yesterday, we agreed for a certain sum daily. And then after doing the first day, he called and said, I got my money. I said, we signed up for a week. Why do you want to? They are used to collecting their money daily. That is the way they manage it. Okay? You don't come to such a person and say, come and file returns. They don't understand it. All the assumptions that we have, that, look, the law assumes that you understand everything I'm saying and that you can do it yourself. I, Professor Abiola, did not know this until I started teaching it. So I will tax pay ago until I started as a tax teacher. I did not know. So you have a system that is so sophisticated. So here they will just say, there's a certain sum of money. But you know the funny thing? Those who are not in the informal sector may not want to come to this sector. You know, with all the advantages that professionals have to become, we just spoke about an architect becoming president, and we now want, because of taxation, say, I also want to come to the informal sector. So that has been the story. Okay? So, the next one, please. Let me quickly go to VAT now. VAT. What I've done here is just to highlight what VAT is about. It's a consumption tax, but it's actually in practice a tax on supply of goods and services. There are cases where people have gone to court to say professionals are not liable to VAT because they are not producing goods and services. It's not a You said exactly, man. Yeah. People have gone to court to say that, but that is a wooden lie. It's not a tax on manufacturers, on producers. No, it's a tax on supply. Are architects supplying services?
Yes.
Are lawyers supplying services? Yes. So once that act is in the affirmative, you are lying. Okay? Now, there are other types of consumption taxes which I've highlighted there. General sales tax, turnover tax, purchase tax. But what distinguishes VAT, I want you to please understand, what distinguishes VAT is that the supplier is entitled to net off, deduct the VAT on all its inputs. As an architect, you will have your inputs, you have your equipment, you have things you buy for your offices for which you have suffered VAT. So when you collect VAT on behalf of government, the law is that you should aggregate all those VAT and deduct them from what you have collected and pay. But federal government doesn't want that. And that is why we say in Nigeria that this is not how VAT works. We actually do not have. You know, the way VAT works is to provide incentives for those who are collecting, so that you don't need to go after them. If I know if I collect money on behalf of government, I can take 60% of it or 40% of it for myself. Do you need to chase me to collect those things? No. So this is part of where government is using it. So it's an incentive. So in Lagos we have Lagos Hotel, Hospitality, Restaurant Consumption Tax, which is an industry-specific consumption tax. It's just for hotels and for recreational centers, facilities. This is the mainstay of states in other federations. And I pose, is Lagos optimizing its taxing power? Then what contributions are professionals making? Because one of the reasons for introducing VAT is to bring professionals to the tax net. And I bet the professionals that are complying in Nigeria are still less than 2%. Yes. So these are the offenses and these are the penalties. Failure to register 50,000 for the first month, then 25,000 for each subsequent month. Under the VAT law, you are expected to issue invoice. It's not for fancy. It's if they come to your office and say, we want to see the invoices you have issued over whatever, and you can't produce them. You know, you are lucky that in Nigeria they will give you VAT. In other countries, when they see that that is a pattern, they may want to make a scapegoat of you. And God forbid. Okay? Then failure to charge. Look at this. If you do a work for 10 million and you refuse to issue invoice alone, you pay 50% of that as penalty. On conviction, meaning that government should actually charge you and then threaten you with imprisonment. But because governments lack the political will to travel this route, they will just collect the money. The way we allow those who drive one way to go after settling, that unfortunately is the approach. Then obligation to charge. If you are an architect in practice and you don't charge it, look at your liability. 150%. So let's assume your turnover is 100 billion. I know that is conservative. Can we take a higher figure?
A round figure is good for calculation. Because you want to do mathematics, a round figure is good.
Please don't spin some theory here. You know you are a celebrity architect. And I'm so happy that you are the one. Please, let's give him. He's the one who said, that is really, really fantastic. And you say, this is mine. That is on a pedestal. That is really, really chilling for me. So let's use a round figure of 200 million, which will be close to what some of you. I don't want to talk about my chairman anymore. Because I know you will be insulted. Why they see you like this? You know what? The child agents to do it for you. If you talk out like they will see through your rosy. They will see they are very perceptive. They are psychologists. Now they will say, oh, this man. Okay, let me quickly round up. They are record keeping. They are not keeping record. Okay, failure to submit to talk. So the next slide is, I'm coming to the end. So now, whatever you do, they will come one day and knock. When you are there, okay, I want somebody to share experience in tax. I want somebody to please, so that this doesn't know later when I'm done. Now, they will come. Yes. Like they gave to my clients. They will give you, once you have visibility, yes. They will.
So, in fact, I entertain them at least twice a year. Lagos State will come,
once Dangote is your mind, there is no idea place. Once you are on the fourth list, there is no idea place. So, they will come and then government contracts and all that, they will look at this. So now, exclusion from VAT, let me say this, there is no VAT on interest in land. They used to collect VAT on interest in land until we challenge it in this case. I'm happy to say that my firm provided support for the lawyer who handled this. And there was a decision in SA Holdings that there is no VAT on rent or on leases. A day before, I was in Tax Appeal Tribunal, South Zone in Benin, and this decision was delivered. And immediately I heard it, I said that was a wrong decision. There is no VAT on rent and leases. The following day, this decision was in our favor. So bear that in mind. If you are paying VAT on leases and you want migration, let us talk. Especially if it is significant. Okay? Now, tax planning, perhaps the most important. I've spoken to a bit of this. Use a more tax efficient business model. You will never see a law firm limited liability. Have you seen any law firm? You will never. Now, are you using limited liability companies?
Some of us are limited. Some of us are limited. Yes. I am limited.
All those limited, they should let us talk. We will unlimited you. It's not, there is, yes.
From my grace to become unlimited.
Yes. Now, yes. Use an SPV. If you are dealing exclusively, look at this, my client. When he said, I do business only for governments and for the IOCs, I didn't believe him. But we checked through his statement of account, all his plans. And I've never shared this anywhere. And I said, look, if you do only government business, or even in the formal sector, where they keep all the record, just use one SPV for that purpose. Don't mix it with something else. Because if you have tax issues and the processing of your TCC is delayed, you will not be able to do business. The MD of this company said, you have lifted a heavy burden from me. He said, do you know I could no longer sleep? Because if you are doing business honestly, you are just coming out of COVID and things are beginning to look up and you cannot stop them because of lack of TCC. And the bottom line, he wasn't owing. Government was owing him. So keep accurate record, please. You are buying diesel, you are flying. What people do is that they use their business expenses to finance their private lifestyle. Yes. Why will you go and take economy when you understand? Yes. So when you see those who are doing well and who are actually not sensitive to what the lack of prices, or you get into a city, Singapore, and you are looking for low budget hotel. You know? You are punishing yourself. You are punishing yourself. Remember, government is a partner. Somebody can say, oh, but it won't cover everything. Yes, but you are going to pay tax on the chargeable profit on the net. So that's why companies are able to give tax to employees. People who would never have witnessed riding in a new car. You see companies, because all those things, there are tax reliefs on them. And after 4 or 5 years, it is amortized to zero. So before you actually criticize the tax system, also look at some of the good things that we have. Then claim all the claimables. I've already listed them. Just go through them. They are so. When I teach this in the class, initially students will come from a strong position that, oh, why do we need to pay tax? We have oil. What are they doing with the money? But by the time we sensitize them to the inevitability of taxation and why it is the oxygen of any nation, and they now buy into it. And we're now teaching them, we are saying, look, when you aggregate, you get all the chargeable income, you now begin to net off, and we begin to itemize them. Some of them will say, well, there will be nothing left, because they then don't want government to lose out. But what we are saying is, when you claim all you are entitled to claim, like this, my scenario, there may be nothing. So claim all the claimables. There are people who are entitled to certain things and they are not claiming them. So avoid infraction. The clients that I assist, because you see, there are people, places I cannot go and say black is white. I must be able to stand firm and say, look, this is the position. In the case of this, my client, I told them categorically. I said, look, you are asking us to go and get this. They are in your system. Authoritatively, they are in your system. And I told him, don't worry, if we are not able to resolve at this level, we will take it to the tribunal. So, avoid these infractions. Be on the last side of the law. I think this is the last slide, yes. Okay, these are the conclusions. Oliver Wendell Holmes said taxes are what we pay for civilized society. Lagos of our dream. What is Lagos? Whatever content you want to put in Lagos. We don't want to have income tax, and you say, don't worry, we don't want income tax in our state. And say we will only tax people when they spend. And people flock to Florida and all that. Okay. Now, ideally, there's politics in the air. We should be hearing what APC has, because on taxation, you will never hear anything. But that is our next mission. To infuse physical content into political debates. How do we have a president that has no clue on international tax issues, taxation of digital economy, after ECOWAS, EEC, you know? What will you do about VAT? We want to inject dynamic ideas into what political parties do, so that they don't just promise to fix the road, they will also show us what they are going to do to raise the revenue. Professionals, transiting to Africa's modern mega city requires humongous resources. Yet, I don't think we have ever faced the kind of crisis we have now. If we actually take stock, we see that we are bankrupt. In other nations, government will downsize. But unfortunately in Nigeria, it is business as usual. Yes, we should be downsizing. Smaller or more effective government. Then professionals have obligations. As taxpayers, and also as agents of collection. So there are things we should do for government. How well are you faring? Professionals belong to an elite class, and I spoke to this. If some people are saying, I'm not a president of a professional body who said it openly, and I took it to my class, and I said, what is your comment? One of my students said, if they put him in the dock, what he just said now, can he say it as a defense? Oh, you said you have 6 offices in the geopolitical zone, and then you buy the generator. I said, if they accuse you of being a tax evader, a defense. Because a defense in law, if they accuse someone of murder, oh, he can plead the accident. He can say, oh, it's an involuntary act. He can plead insanity. You know? He can plead provocation. Provocation will not really avail for murder. Maybe he can turn it to manslaughter or something. So all those, what are they doing with my money? they avail? I doubt. So, you as architect cannot be asking those questions. He said, what am I doing? Look at the way you are looking. Without the support of government, if there is no NIA, sir, you can't be president of NIA. Is NIA not chartered? It's chartered by government. So we can't say, oh, what are they doing? Those conversations must change. When I hear them, sometimes I just keep quiet and say, I can't engage at this level. Okay? And the final one. All the changes you want to be. Maybe I'm talking to the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Just get angry, sir. I say, even if I'm not going to be president, I'm going to change somebody who in 20, 30 years will become president. So if you cannot be the change, you must not be the change. The final slide. So now, I've referred to some of this my write-up. If you want to read more, then final slide, I guess. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Yola Sani, SAN. I felt like I was sitting in the university lecture room again. If you look at the title of the paper, it is Tax Advocacy 101. That should remind you for architectural professionals. Very illuminating paper. I will say that this paper is not only a lecture, but also as an advice to us as professionals in many areas. Most of the things it spoke about, many of us have experienced them. The taxman coming to your office with a letter and just telling you have to pay 160 million, whatever amount. And just like the MD of the company that he helped, for the next 2 weeks or so, you will not be able to sleep until you eventually find a way. I think we should listen to the advice he has given to us so that we can avoid those pitfalls. It was a very long paper. I will not be able to go through all the summaries I took, but let me just go to some salient points which I believe we should take away from the paper. The first is that we should engage in tax planning. We should not just leave things to take place by themselves. Somebody said that things are not done by not being done. You have to do it. So don't leave your tax planning undone. And how do you do that tax planning? You have to use an efficient business model. Initially, I was operating a business name in my company, but along the line, maybe out of ignorance or out of fashion, I migrated to a limited liability company. And today, I will tell you, I'm suffering the consequences. And I'm happy. He has told us that there's a way to migrate back from limited liability company to a business name. And I'm going to do it because I cannot be, Then we should use SPV, that's special purpose vehicles for certain type of businesses, and we should try as much as possible to keep accurate records, because, like he said, if they come without assessment, direct assessment, and you are not able to produce any documents or records to counteract what they have done, it might stand, and that will be very terrible. And we should avoid infractions to the law. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. As he has said, as complicated as this presentation is, the law assumes we know everything, but we don't. So, for the little that we can do, we can register for VAT, we can register and have our TIN, and other things that we can do, we can then do those, and leave the professionals like the professor to handle the complicated side for us. But I hope you won't charge us too much. And And he told us something that is very interesting. He said we should use our business expenses to finance our private lifestyle. Yes. Many of us don't know this. I have not been doing it. Yes, I have not been doing it. And I think from now on, I'm going to be using my business expenses to finance my private lifestyle. Thank you very much, Professor, once again, for a very brilliant paper you have given to us. As a professor, I do not expect anything less. And I was disappointed. And I'm sure all of us here, none of us here disappointed. Now, I know we have a lot of questions to ask. And we have a lot of, maybe a few comments to make, but a lot of questions to ask. If you have any question, this is the time to ask. You please give us your name and ask your question. Please let us try and be as brief as possible because we have spent so much time and we still have one more paper to take. Thank you.
My name is Victor. Thank you, Prof, for the paper. I have been running a business plan, and recently I felt that I should upgrade to limited because apart from the tax, we are told that the liability, like if you had issue with your company, that it goes to an entity, the limited liability, while you are safe. While the other one, you are directly involved in the whatever happens. So I don't know how, what you say about that. Whether limited liability help you to be free from arrest. You arrest the company lady and you are sleeping in your house. Then number two, on the issue of the tax matters, but you have explained the extra payment. But at the end of the thing, there are some companies that will not allow you to quote if you are just business name. And I've lost some credit because of that. So these are things that made me to think that I should upgrade so that I'll be able to face the world. And also they talk about big shares with a big share capital and so on. How does it have limited liability? Should it be big share or anyhow? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. We are going to take all the questions and the professor will respond to all of them at once. Jide
Ololade, Prof. My own question is straight ahead. Is the issue of the business class and the economy. I want to find out why, in your wisdom, you think that if I have the option of the two, I'd rather go for. I was trying to crack my brain on what would have been the reasons with it. I mean that your opinion is that if I get to a country where I do not reside, and then I have the option of doing a better code and the budget detail on each of them suffices and your reasons for it. You didn't go deep into that.
Thank you so much. The man in suit. Please let us try and be brief. Just go straight to the question. Tell us your name first.
All right, my name is Chukwano David. Thank you, Prof, for the wonderful section. I was going to ask two questions. One, you made mention of 2.5 contract tax. I need to know if it's the entire capital or from the local profits. Two, LIRS, that's Lagos State and Federal. Need clarity on it because I know my company we've running some tax payments in 2020, but we were told we're going to do something all over again for Lagos State. It looks like we're paying over. I need clarity on that. I've not been able to. Chukwano David, sir. Chukwano David. And the last one is, are there some sort of discounts you're going to give from anyone from this forum approaching you thereafter? Thank you.
Very nice question. Okay, welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Adewako. My questions are for clarification. Your client who had overpayment, was there any means of his recovery of the overpayment? Would he be deferred to the following year, for instance, or would he just lose that excess? The second one is the VAT that you spoke about. which actually means value added tax, which you have actually broken down. The reality is that you should actually deduct all the VATs you have paid on everything that your inputs in the business before you now remit to the government. But government always insists on getting the full thing. How do you sort that out? Thank you.
Thank you. Let me finish with this section.
I am Odetoye Adeola. Tax and stamp duty. Are they the same?
Tax and stamp duty.
Tax and stamp duty. Any difference?
Or do you want to ask if stamp duty is a tax? It's a form of tax.
Yes. And why I'm asking the question is that there are some clients that will even take the stamp duty off your fee, and you are still expected to pay tax on the same income. Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's move on, please.
Good afternoon, my name is Uzo Obi. My question is on VAT. I think you touched on it, but I always find a struggle with my clients. When I give them an invoice with VAT, they say they don't want to pay. I should give them a different account number. I know you're supposed to deduct how much you pay versus how much you pay to the government, but how do we tackle this issue of customers saying, I'm not paying VAT, take it from the invoice?
Thank you. Do you have any question from here? Okay. Let me go to the other end. Any questions okay. Please tell us your name and ask the question.
Okay. My name is Frederick. My question is, are there conditions where tax waivers are given by government? And also, are there conditions, is the government allowed by law to make deductions directly from the company account, pending when you clarify your tax representation?
Thank you. Any other question? Okay, one way in your section you didn't ask a question. I think this will be the last question so that we can quickly round up and take the next paper.
Good afternoon. So I want to ask, at what point do you start paying tax? If you just float your business, at what point? Is it immediately or when you start making up to a particular amount of money before you start paying tax?
Thank you. I think we've taken all the questions and no comments. I will pass the mic to the Prof to respond to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited that people really speak during the lecture. Honestly, I didn't know how this would be received, but thank you so much. Now, let me make one or two clarifications. Using expenses to finance lifestyle. Remember I said the tax law will not allow everything to be taken out. So there's a test of only, exclusively, necessarily, and reasonably incurred. Okay? There are companies who give vehicles to some categories of their staff for a business purpose, true or false? True. And there are individuals who also have flourishing business, but who will never think of riding cars. The employees of other companies are riding, true or false? True. So there are business expenses that you can expense that it has become certain but that people are not cognizant of because they think they are spending all their money. At a certain level, you have to pay attention to intangibles. At a certain level, there are hotels you cannot stay. At a certain level, you make a decision that you are going to sleep in the best hotel wherever you go. As a company, I've seen my students being treated in this manner. When we go for conferences, some of our students, they are not big boys, they are not, they are not professors, they are not SAM, they are not president of association, but their company, we just want to treat them well. Which one is better? When I started when I got my first job, my office was 29 King George 5. Then some of my colleagues were traveling to Abuja through academic. My boss, as a policy, we make sure that the firm, a small firm, that you fly. What do you think that did to me as a young professional? Of course, there are certain things I can never experience because of how I started. Are you with me? Yes. So I do not mean that you can pay your children's school fees and then say you must justify it. So there is a limit. So please bear that in mind. And I think I've addressed Gideon Lolade's, Architect Gideon Lolade's question too. Look, there are businesses you connect when you are in certain group. You may not get it when you are looking for it. That may not be your objective at that particular time. Okay? But there are networking that take place. There is a problem when you have not reached that level and you are struggling to do it. 1 trillion contract. It's your profile that will get you the job. But there are some businesses where minimum share capitals are prescribed. Okay, because it comes at some cost. Okay, you are going to pay stamp duty, you are going to. But basically, if what you want to do does not require $1 billion share capital, registering a company with $1 billion share capital will only hit your capital. And you will be, but there are some businesses bidding, they will say, before you can bid for this, your share capital must be above this level. You have a reason for pitching it so high. Okay? Then Chukwu Onu David, 22.5% withholding tax. This is a product of engagement, and I'm sure NIA must have been part of that.